Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Jessie.
And this is Glowing in Tech.
Powered by Coding Black Females. So, welcome to part 2 with Jessica Cregg.
Woo!
Right now, Jessica's going to do a tech topic in 10 for us, where she tries to introduce a concept in 10 minutes or less. What's your tech topic going to be?
Okay, so my topic is going to be the Dora metrics.
I love the Dora metrics.
Do you love the Dora metrics?
I do. I think they're fantastic.
Do you believe that they...
Well, let's get into what it is.
Well, okay.
All right, should I do the thing?
Yeah, do the thing and then we can just...
All right. When I started doing my job, I noticed that everyone kept talking about Dora metrics. Oh yeah, this is so, yeah. Dora. Who is Dora?
The Explorer.
What has she got in her backpack that everyone is so psyched about? And yeah, I didn't know what they were. So I had to find that out. And a while ago, one of the people who started the original like State of DevOps reports, Nigel Kirsten, he's a field CTO over at Puppet and lives in London. In sunny East London. So and he did this excellent breakdown of like how the report came to be, what DevOps means. Like, it's amazing, it's so good. But he did this really great recap, because it's about like 10 years old now, the sort of like movement of DevOps. It's about like 10 years old now, and essentially what happened is Patrick Dubois, this engineer over in Belgium, in Ghent, he created this. He became so fascinated by this other team that he was working with, and their speed and their agility and the way that they could just get so much done. And he started to study that, and that kind of led him to put on a conference, and he called it DevOps. And he was like really scared at first because, he said that he was quite nervous at first because Agile was such a big thing, and this was going to be like a non-Agile event. And DevOps sort of caught on, and Nigel and his colleague Alana over at Puppet started a report, like a research report, to kind of find out like what DevOps is. And it was, as a movement, it became like there wasn't like a manifesto published. It was deliberately kept quite democratized because they wanted to kind of see how it was interpreted by people, and how the kind of the principles that originally came up in this conference like became like shared, and like what was popular, and keep it quite like people focused. But that obviously like led to a lot of disparity, and lots of people have like different definitions. A DevOps engineer at one organization does a different thing from a DevOps engineer at another organization. Then there's a whole group of people that don't think that there needs to even be DevOps engineers. But I think it was like in the 2013 report where like Jez Humble, Gene Kim, and Dr. Nicole Forsgren joined like the report team to create these sort of I think it's now called the Accelerate report. There's like they've kind of splintered off into two different sections. And what they found is they formed the DevOps Research and Assessment Forum, I think it's called, and that's the Dora, that's what that stands for. They created like this consulting arm, and they effectively created what they studied into a sort of like a framework, like a measurement framework to create organizational success. And that framework has 4 metrics: deployment frequency, mean time lead for changes, so like the time between something being live in your code base to being like actually on your production server, mean time to recover, how fast you get up when you fall down, and then change failure rate. And those metrics became the barometer of like how we measure like high performing organizations. So those are the Dora metrics. And Nicole goes into them in her book Accelerate, which people, I mean, it's amazing. It's a really, really good book. It's one of those books that really kind of ties up it links up the sort of anecdotal people side of things with success, like with like the actual kind of material results we get.
My question would be, why are Dora metrics useful, and what's the point in measuring those things? Like, what does it tell you about an organization?
Oh, okay, yeah. So it tells you a lot about the culture of the organization. So it's so easy for, I think that's why a lot of DevOps talks end up about being people and culture. It's because a lot of the movement encapsulates what like the material impact that our human, sentiments, feelings have on the way we work. So if you have like low test coverage, really flaky tests, or you don't understand your code base, you're not going to deploy as frequently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then that's going to change the level of efficiency you can get as an organization, because it's going to take ages for features to kind of like come from like inception to actual kind of like realization. And that translates to obviously like dollar value, because in the time that you're waiting to release a feature, someone else who has like architected themselves to be really nimble, and they have like I don't believe there's a 10x, like 10x's exist, but they've got like 10x's on their team. They can just like race to market ahead of you.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool though. And because something that I really like about the Dora metrics is that they can be used to interpret ways that the developer experience can be improved.
Yeah.
What can be dangerous is when they're used to as like a stick of like, you need to hit this level, right?
Yes.
For it to be an efficient team. I don't believe that that's how they should be used. And I don't think that was the intention, but it's more like, how is it possible? You know, once you've got those 4 things, you can see exactly what you said. Like it's taking ages to deploy from pre-prod to production, or it's taking ages for the point where we fall down to then bring everything back up again. And that's the way that you can start looking for ways to make the developer's life easier, because that's the ultimate goal, right? You want to make it easy to build and to get that thing into production as soon as possible.
Yeah, you want to lower the cognitive load.
Yeah.
This is why like I think like talking about the team that created the metrics is like so important, because they're still producing reports to this day. And one of the latest iterations of the report, the Puppet one that Nigel Curzon launched like the end of last year, in that he talks about how the people that talk about culture and the culture being a problem are usually the lower performing organizations, because when you define the interactions that you have and how teams should interact with each other, how teams can like interact, if you give people enough guidance about how you intend for them to perform at your organization, then they don't need to think about it. And then they don't start blaming this amorphous thing called culture that you never really need to define. Like, you know, you never need to scapegoat that. I'm sorry.
No, that's a really interesting perspective. That's really interesting, because I guess you're, like you said, you're lowering the cognitive load by making sure that the process to release is as smooth as possible. But if you don't have that in place, it can be really hard for someone to identify exactly what it is. And then you end up saying, oh, it's the culture. We just do things slowly here. And it's frustrating me. And you don't have that like, actually it's this point specifically in the process that is the problem, but you're calling it culture because you can't figure out what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Which is not to say that culture doesn't exist, because of course it exists. It's just it's kind of almost feels akin to that whole I don't know whether or not you've been in those sort of like biased conversations where people like say things like, I don't know if they just fit in or something, and you're like, what you're saying is you're verbalizing your bias here.
Yeah.
We've had loads of conversations about the difference between culture ad and culture fit,
and
how now we're moving more towards a culture ad kind of perspective rather than culture fit. So we've been having conversations about culture, the fact that it's ever changing. It's not something that should stay a constant thing, like this is how we do things here, because you're never going to learn to adapt and grow, and people can't really feel included in the space that they feel like they need to morph into something that they're not in order to match this culture that you're projecting essentially. So culture ad, definitely.
I love that, because that kind of fits in with the whole sort of idea that my colleague said this to me recently, that teams are immutable, that every single time you add someone to a team, it's a new team, because like, everyone interacts differently.
I like that.
That's so cool, the culture ad sort of.
I think the moment that you try to say this is our culture now and this is how we want to keep it, that's when you've like stagnated and it's all going to go badly, isn't it?
Literally.
Which is like, isn't to say that like you shouldn't be able to define what good is. Like I feel like we need to be able to like be really specific and intentional about the sort of the spaces that we want to kind of cultivate. Like we need to be able to say this is how some things are unacceptable, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So, in what conversations do you speak about the Dora metrics? I've never been in a conversation where this word has even been mentioned. So, can you give me an insight into when you have those kind of conversations?
I've come across them mainly when people have been talking about how to build and create really good teams and measure their team's success and measure their team's happiness. But I think that's kind of a bit of I kind of agree with the point that you made about like, I don't know whether or not they should be used specifically in that way.
Yeah, I think it's different kind of conversations, because I think as soon as you start using it as like a measure of success of how a team's doing, then you're ignoring loads of other things that could be at play.
Yeah.
But I do think if you have problems, you're not sure where they lie, the Dora metrics can be like, look, it's taking you really long to get this thing into production. That's probably really demotivating for your devs because they've spent ages building this thing and now they have to wait so long for it to be in production. Or, why is it that when you go down, it takes you so long to go back up again? That prolonged period of stress that we're all under, like something needs to change there. But it's not that it's any one particular person's fault. It's just like, now I can see where I need to focus my energy on fixing. As a team leader, as an engineering leader, this is the thing we need to focus on improving.
Okay, amazing.
It must be so interesting to look at that in context with like alongside like attrition. Right?
Ooh, that'd be a good study.
Yeah.
I might look at some research papers on that because, that's that. I'm sorry, just carry on.
No, I was going to go off into, I was going full free association. Like, there was like a conversation that I had with like a developer. He was like a lead on his team, and we were talking about like whether or not like the metrics, whether or not all of them communicate enough value, and we're talking about like whether or not like the quality of a deployment should become a metric. Right?
Yeah. And then how would you measure that?
Yeah, and it's just like, who is saying that? Oh, this is good.
But then when they were coming up with the Dora metrics, they must have had to have oh gosh, that's so interesting. How would they have figured
perspective is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you can give it to one person, like, oh, the quality is top notch. This is amazing. And someone else will be like, what is this? Like, this needs to change, that needs to change. Like, that's really hard to qualify. Yeah, really hard to qualify.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to what's the tech today?
Yeah.
My favourite segment. What is the tech tea? So, Jessica Cregg, can you tell us your tech tea?
So, what had happened was I was on Twitter for too long one day, and I noticed that saw a lot of people talking about they were at EMF Camp this year.
And what is that?
EMF Camp, I believe, and I could be very wrong, is a really cool, like volunteer-led conference / camping trip consisting of like talks, workshops, and I think there's some raves in the evening.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a party as well.
No way. Yeah. I'm trying to go to a rave.
Yeah,
but you have to camp. It's a festival.
I cancelled that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Retract that statement.
But it's so cool because they have like these hackable hardware badges.
This is cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It looks great.
I really want to go.
But
well, there was a sign, and I think it was kind of like an act of protest. Someone put up this sign about like the how few. Well, zero. There was zero women of color speakers there, or black female speakers there.
Mm-hmm. It was, the sign said like white speakers or white male speakers infinite, like the infinite sign, and on the other half of the sign it said black women speakers or black speakers 1
since 2017 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they posted that themselves.
Because I think they maybe, I don't know, wanted to like get ahead of, I don't know, but they posted that as their tweet, and they were like very like, we hear you, had like an inclusion email address, like tell us how we can improve, and then turned off replies, which I feel like there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there. It's like, talk to us.
But we don't want to hear you.
But the thing is, okay, so I saw some of the replies and I don't remember them all exactly, but I remember that the EMF camp, they said that, okay, but we are willing to pay this person.
Yeah.
Like, and another reply that they said that they had to turn replies off because they'll still run the conference.
Yeah.
So, but people are still able to say their opinions in the quote streets.
Yeah.
And you said you had a really helpful reply.
Yeah, because I was trying to be like, because this is a volunteer-led event, right? And I think we all work on volunteer-led events. We know that it can be hard, it can be really tricky, and you can't do everything, and you have to make compromises. The tweet itself was really well intentioned. I don't think there's any like malintent there. Especially because they were talking about like paying people for diversity work because it's work. But yeah, I quite teased it just being like, there's like, here's an idea. I think this is something that a lot of conferences do now, is that they like partner with different community orgs and give like discounted tickets or free tickets, or work on the they review the speaker panel or the speaker agenda, and they look to see whether or not it's inclusive enough, and then they make some decisions based on what it looks like.
There are so many community organizations based on different identities, and even like the Diverse Speakers Bureau is like an organization that specifically have a catalogue of diverse speakers. So it's kind of like, it's tricky. I think that the like you said, it was a very well-intended tweet, but it was very, have you done anything yourself yet before this point?
Okay. This is where I'll step in. Okay.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
So I think that because we come from like ethnic minority backgrounds, we're in spaces where we're looking to diversify the tech space, we're kind of projecting our own ideas onto other people. So I generally do think they looked at the speakers list and was like, well, this is a bunch of amazing speakers. Like, and they didn't have people in the room that said, are there any, is this a diverse speaker list? They'll probably just focused on, okay, like we've got some good speakers, and just that conversation was never actually had.
Yeah.
What did you just say that I felt like?
They could have done something before sending the tweet.
Yeah. So we're assuming.
We are assuming they
haven't done something before, because they could literally be looking into ideas and saying, okay, but we also do need to have other voices in this too.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I feel like sometimes we can tend to look at the extremes. Like if they've just tweeted about it, it means they've done nothing themselves, but we actually don't know the full story. So I think we need to be really careful when we're saying those kind of things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
You're right. You're right. Because they've set up an inclusion address.
Yeah, exactly.
It suggests that they're doing something.
Have they done anything since?
I ain't been keeping up, have you?
No.
Like they could literally have a whole thread of all the things that they've done before.
I've emailed them to get in touch because I really want to work on the next one, and just like, because it looks cool, and also
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Actually, yeah,
and I think it's important when people are reaching out for help to not vilify them.
For sure. Because
it's just, that's a step in the right direction, and that's actually what, like, we have to focus on, well, what do we want here?
For real, we need to encourage and
if we vilify people, if they ask for help, then they're not going to ask for help again, unless they're going to continue doing the same things that they've always done, because, well, we do want to make it diverse, but we don't want backlash on Twitter for asking for help.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we need to focus on, okay, but what do we really care about here?
Yeah.
What we care about is having diverse speakers at tech conferences.
Yeah.
Okay, and how can I help? Do I know someone that I can connect them with? Because they literally have just said, we have a problem, we're calling ourselves out for it, and we'll pay, we understand that this is actual work, and we'll pay the person that helps us out on this.
Yeah, there's a lot right with what they did as well, for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like we need to recognise that, because if we just crucify them, okay, that's an extreme word. That is an extreme word. I don't want to use extreme languages.
Vilify.
But it's just like, if we react negatively, we need to be careful. I feel like we just need to approach it from a solutions-focused perspective, but acknowledging the fact that it is disappointing.
Yeah, I think there's a line to be drawn as well between, like, I don't want to vilify. I don't think there was much vilification, but I do think people can be disappointed and frustrated.
Yeah,
and those are valid feelings, because there are a lot of conferences that I see do this incredibly well. Like a lot of the conferences and festivals that we've been to, they have a quota where a minimum of this percentage have to be diverse backgrounds, and that is the standard now. So I think that's where the frustration and disappointment comes from. It's like, I'm just surprised that you got to this point and realised that there was an error here.
Yeah. Because like, because if we're going down that route of thinking like everyone was really well intentioned here, you can so easily, like as you said, like they put together the speaker list, maybe the session agenda, the whole like the weekend's agenda, and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And they wanted to assign everyone based on merit and quality, because they thought, because you can think like that's the fairest way of doing things. But if you don't acknowledge that we don't all, like the starting line is not in the same place for everyone, that's where those kind of well-intentioned things can kind of go awry. Because I remember like in the replies, there are loads of people being like, oh, so you want to assign like tickets based on someone's...
Yeah, I saw that. I was about
Yeah.
to ask your opinion on that.
Yeah.
Someone replied saying, are you saying that we should treat people differently based on their race? Because someone said...
Offer discounted tickets.
Yeah, offer discounted tickets to like people of colour.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's like bold of you to assume that doesn't happen anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
I think it's a tricky one.
it's a tricky one, but like you've got to acknowledge that for systemic oppression, like systemic reasons, the way that we function and the opportunities that are afforded to get you to the point where you're considered of merit enough to perform at that festival, there was already a lot of things at play that selected people based on race. So it's not necessarily like making an exception at that point. Like there's already been bias in selection and opportunity. I think it's just trying to mediate for the fact that those things have happened before that was in their control. I'm not saying it's EMS Festival's fault that there are not enough Black people in tech. I'm saying that they can do something to help that problem.
And what we spoke about even at our lead dev talk was about where you sourcing your talent from. And it's like where you advertising your CFP. Because, well, loads of tech conferences, like they launched their CFPs. Is it CFPs?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, am I using the
That's
wrong
call for
acronym?
proposal. That's when you propose a talk that you'd like to do for a conference.
Exactly. Thanks for explaining. And it's just, and sometimes we can miss it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like there's communities that we're part of, and if it was in their newsletters, we'll probably see it. Like if it was in Code Bar's newsletter, if it was in Coding Black Females, Code First Girls, like you're probably more likely to have more diverse people apply because you're spreading the awareness in these community-based places, you know?
Yeah. Before this event, I'd never heard of EMF Festival.
I had never heard of it.
Before this,
Who's
incident.
the iconic person that I really rate? Kevin. He does the...
Kevin Lewis.
Kevin Lewis is amazing, isn't he?
He's amazing. He put up a video of him speaking and there's this like little... How do you explain it?
It's like it's a badge, but it was a computer screen that was connected to the software that auto-generates captions.
Yeah, and he had a mask on and it was like auto-generating the captions of him speaking with a mask on.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
It's so cool.
And I saw he was at EMF and I was like, this is so cool.
That is where not only does he do some awesome work with You Got This,
Yeah.
which is a great conference, which just every single time it holds, like there's a session, it's always great. But he also does dev advocacy so well.
He's such a great speaker.
Kevin Lewis is amazing, and he just is so good at dev advocacy.
So good.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, Kevin, hi.
Hi, Kevin.
Really well. It's cute.
So what would be your number one tip? Let's turn this into a productive and beneficial situation. What would be your number one tip to EMF Festival?
I think...
Are we doing this work for free?
No.
I think it's both of what you said. We need to appreciate the well-intentioned stuff. They didn't have to tweet that out in the first place.
Yeah.
They
could have just ripped the sign out. Like,
yeah,
cut the cord.
exactly. They could have been like, kill it. So they addressed the problem. They like took accountability. They asked what they could do about it. They clearly have been doing something because they've set up an inclusive like thing, like an email address. And as soon as I emailed, I got a response back being like, thanks so much, we'll be in touch. Like I genuinely think the thing is being fixed. I just think it's exposed a bit of a vulnerability, and it's exposed a bit of like a, you know, there's still work to be done out there.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. Yeah. WIP kind of vibes, isn't it?
Agile out here.
Agile, always, babe.
CI.
CRCD. That's a bit of me.
End it there. That's amazing.
So Jessica, I think that is a great point to end it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
How can we keep in contact with you and follow what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm at Jessica Cregg on Twitter and on LinkedIn, but mainly on those places. So let's talk.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on. We've loved having you.
Yeah,
I've had so much
great.
fun.
Thanks so much.